fortress Australia. The nation closes its borders in a desperate bid to slow down the coronavirus. Tourists and visitors banned from entering the country. Millions of Australians left stranded as airlines ground international flights. This morning, the deep impact on life as we know it.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And with life as we know it changing day by day, it's hard for the media to keep up. They say a week is a long time in politics, but with the coronavirus, things are changing by the hour. Only 3 days ago, the big story was Australia shutting its borders.
Sorry, we're closed.
Shut the gate. Fortress Australia.
And Tasmania was going even further, barring visitors from the mainland too, which produced this memorable headline in the Hobart Mercury.
We've got a moat.
And we're not afraid to use it.
But shutting the gate to the outside world was just the start. Whoever would have thought we'd see the police closing Bondi Beach to enforce social distancing? And who would have thought this would come soon after?
Breaking now, Australia in shutdown.
In the months ahead, we're going to find out just how strong we are.
Drastic new measures to stop the coronavirus spread. Pubs, clubs, churches, gyms and cinemas to close.
And that's why today, Australia woke up to headlines like these.
Contagion shutdown.
PM's tough love rules.
No more fun.
The shutdown followed a confusing day for the public and the media, where mixed messages left the community bemused. In the last 36 hours, we've had different statements from Prime Minister Scott Morrison, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian, Victoria's Daniel Andrews, Queensland's Anastasia Palaszczuk, WA's Mark McGowan, South Australia's Stephen Marshall, and the ACT's Chief Minister Andrew Barr. So it's no surprise the public didn't know what to think or who to trust. As Sky's Ashley Gillen noted,
as soon as you start seeing different states and territories doing their own thing, I think that really does damage confidence right around the country.
But it's not just political leaders creating confusion by arguing about what we need to do.
Anybody who has a friend in the medical profession, anybody who's listening to the doctors' groups, the Australian Medical Association, they are going much further than the official federal government advice at this point. And that is why people are getting scared, and that is why people are getting confused, because they don't know who they should be listening to.
Last Friday, medical and health officials called for a unified voice on COVID-19 amid concerns that alternative voices in the media were creating confusion and panic. And the Public Health Association was telling its members to fall into line.
Whether it's extreme versions of misinformation, people pursuing their own commercial interest, or others offering opinions based on what they heard, these kinds of things are driving the panics we're seeing.
And who were they pointing the finger at? Well, one target was the ABC's Dr. Norman Swan, who's been pushing for a more rapid lockdown of the community. Swan's daily podcast, Coronacast, has been a massive hit with the public, with the podcast topping the charts in Australia. And as business leader Sam Mostyn observed on Q&A,
in the absence of there being a single source of truth, Norman Swan has become that voice for many people. And so when I talk to people, they say, Norman said to do this, or Dr. Swan said to do this. And he's become a de facto trusted source of news.
The federal government got so upset last week with Swan's public criticism and advocacy that it called ABC management to object. And what was the response? The spokesperson told us,
Dr. Norman Swan is a highly experienced ABC journalist and health professional. It would be incorrect to suggest he is under any external pressure to alter his independent analysis and commentary, which many Australians trust and value.
Swan is still doing his podcast, still talking to the experts and still speaking his mind. But commentators like him do face a challenge: how to hold government and health authorities to account without confusing the key health message. And what is the media's role during the worst crisis since World War II? Yesterday on Insiders, The Guardian's Catherine Murphy gave a clear answer.
At all times, and particularly now, we need to get our facts right. We need to get the information correct. We also need to counter, wherever we can, misinformation, which is ubiquitous in relation to this issue. There are rumours pounding through social media. There are outright deceptions. Fraudulent information is circulating. The other thing we really need to do is to continue to ask questions, which is our job. Now, we can't be stunned into some sort of silence or timidity because the times are very serious.
Meanwhile, inevitably, fake news is flourishing, as the PM observed last week.
There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of ridiculous stuff that's circulating on text messages and internets about lockdowns and all of this, and even recordings alleging to represent cabinet meetings and things of this nature. Don't believe it, it's rubbish.
And what was the PM referring to? Viral text messages last week announcing harsh new restrictions on our freedom to move, 5 days before they happened, giving details of a draconian clampdown that included
nationwide travel restrictions on all citizens, closure of all government and private premises except essential services.
But it was all a hoax and a lie. And Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt was soon debunking it, telling people to get their facts from official sites like health.gov.au. So, where did it come from? Well, the dot points were real, lifted from this press release by the Prime Minister of Malaysia, which had taken those measures. But for those who read carefully, there was a dead giveaway, with a reference to Muzakara meetings, which are run by Malaysia's Council for Islamic Religious Affairs. So, did this sort of misinformation increase the panic in Australia? You bet it did.
Staff resorting to throwing toilet paper to customers so no one missed out.
Guys, push! You can see huge queues in the store's car park, staff struggling to control everyone and police present.
But amid the frenzy, some are not taking COVID-19 seriously enough. Telling readers, don't panic, the editor of Sydney's Suburban Weekly Times claimed the, quote, temporary coronavirus scare would affect far fewer Australians than the regular wintertime flu, and wondered what all the fuss and kerfuffle was about. And someone with a much bigger and more vulnerable audience has also been ridiculing the public alarm.
The almost universal reaction I am getting is that we have gone mad. In spite of all the money spent on education, we revert to hysteria and alarmism. We now seem to be facing the health version of global warming. Exaggeration in almost everything.
In the last 2 weeks, Alan Jones has repeatedly poured scorn on people's concerns and on new social distancing rules.
I'm sorry, this is bloody ridiculous.
And he's also asked why we're taking such drastic action.
Australia, what have we got, 24 million people? 3 deaths. 3 deaths. We had 900 last year from the flu. No one blinked.
Now, it's bad enough to minimise the dangers, but what makes this doubly irresponsible is that many of 2GB's listeners are over 65 years old and at increased risk of dying from COVID-19. And while Jones is 78 and theoretically in even greater danger, he can afford to be relaxed because 2GB management have him broadcasting from the safety of his multi-million-dollar country estate. Meanwhile, there are 336,000 confirmed coronavirus cases around the world and almost 15,000 people have died. And Italy is providing a terrible warning of how bad it could get.
Nobody expected this. Nobody thought they'd be treating so many so quickly. And it's not like flu. It is chronic pneumonia, and it is killing hundreds each day.
There are now 15 patients.
The doctors say they've seen nothing like it before and are warning other countries, especially the United Kingdom, that they will see it as well.
And so could the USA, where the virus has been getting out of control, and entire states like California, Illinois and New York are now in lockdown. On Friday, President Trump was asked by NBC's Peter Alexander if he could reassure the public.
Nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say. Go ahead. I think it's a very nasty question, and I think it's a very bad signal that you're putting out to the American people. The American people are looking for answers, and they're looking for hope. That's really bad reporting.
In America and elsewhere, there's not only a war against the virus, there's also a war being fought in the media between left and right, and China and America over who is to blame. And Trump has repeatedly been in the firing line.
The other day, you said that you were not responsible for the testing shortfall. Very simple question. Does the buck stop with you? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it a 10. I think we've done a great job.
Before Trump started taking the virus seriously, he was suggesting it was no worse than the flu, assuring Americans it was tremendously under control, and branding criticism of his performance the new Democratic hoax. But his friends at the Murdoch's Fox News reckon he has done a great job and have hilariously invited viewers to agree.
Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. How would you grade President Trump's leadership in the nation's fight against the Wuhan
Chinese virus? Superb, great, or very good?
And the result? 79% of viewers thought the answer was superb. The President and Fox News have also copped flack for referring repeatedly to COVID-19 as the, quote, Chinese virus.
A war against the Chinese virus.
But once again, when confronted by the media, the President just keeps on insisting he's right.
Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all, no, not at all. It comes from China. That's why.
And last week, Trump got public backing from the far-right One America news network, whose White House correspondent, Chanel Rion, lobbed him a perfect question to hit out of the park.
Do you consider the term Chinese food racist because it's food that originates in China or it has Chinese?
No, I don't think it's
and
racist.
On that note,
I don't think it's racist at all.
On that note, major left-wing news media, even in this room, have teamed up with Chinese Communist Party narratives, and they're claiming you are racist.
It amazes me when I read the Wall Street Journal, which is always so negative. It amazes me when I read the New York Times. Is not even. I barely read it. You know, we don't distribute it in the White House anymore, and the same thing with the Washington Post. Because, you see, I know the truth.
Fox News is equally convinced it knows the truth, and until recently was also poo-pooing the crisis, with claims like these highlighted by the Washington Post.
I feel like the more I learn about this, the less there is to worry about.
I was about to say the same thing.
It's not the end of days. Some years, tens of thousands of people die from the flu. Every year people die from the flu.
It's a virus like the flu. It actually can be mistaken for the flu.
But now President Trump is taking the virus so seriously, Fox News and its self-appointed experts have performed a complete U-turn and are doing so too.
We are facing an incredibly contagious and dangerous virus that is moving across the world from one hotspot to another.
We're fighting an invisible enemy, and now slowing the spread is crucial. It is key.
We don't have immunity to this virus. It's a new virus. It's a pandemic strain of a virus we haven't seen before.
Back in Australia, Andrew Bolt has also undergone a conversion. Late in January, he was telling Sky viewers,
I am pretty sure that a real deadly pandemic would look a lot more deadly than this.
And advising them.
But there is one more protection I think you should consider. How about building up some resistance? Resistance to the emergence of panic, panic about the fires, panic about global warming, panic about this coronavirus, panic about almost anything these days.
But by last week, he was as worried as the rest of us.
We have no choice. We must treat this as deadly serious.
And fellow Sky host Graham Richardson has also had to change his tune. 2 weeks ago, he was telling Bolt,
I must be the target market. I'm not exactly young.
Oh, for heaven's sake, don't say that.
I do have a pre-existing condition, but it won't stop me going to lunch. It won't stop me enjoying myself. It won't stop me living. I think we've got to make sure we keep living through these things. If you just give up and say, righto, I'll build this great big wall around my house and stay inside, I think it'd be a very sad thing.
But last week, as his employers and everyone else realised the enormity of the threat, he and Alan Jones were both staying away from the studio.
This is the first week in 50 years of Richo's life because he's confined to barracks. He hasn't had some MSG, hasn't had a Chinese meal.
And speaking of Chinese, earlier this month we showed you Bronwyn Bishop on Sky confidently claiming that the virus is a Chinese biological weapon. And on his radio show, Alan Jones has been giving that theory oxygen too.
Without getting into conspiracy theories, we were talking about this at the weekend. Someone said to me, well, China's pretty angry with the United States of America and pretty racked off about everyone having shots at China from left, right and centre. And they said, oh, well, China made the virus, released the virus in order to devastate the Western economies, and they're doing a pretty good job.
That could be so. That could be so.
Fellow 2GB broadcaster and Sky host Chris Smith has also suggested it could be true.
I'm not one for conspiracies, but it's a hot story which has also named the key Chinese agent involved who was apparently sent packing from Canada. It's biological espionage gone terribly wrong.
But is there any evidence that the Chinese created and released it? None whatsoever. But why let the facts stop you playing the blame game, especially when the Chinese government is doing it too?
Chinese diplomat accuses US of spreading coronavirus.
Zhao's comments echoed a rumoured conspiracy widely circulated in China that US military personnel had brought the virus to China during their participation of the 2019 Military World Games in Wuhan last October.
And what do they have as evidence? An anti-imperialist Canadian website called Global Research, whose claim has been tweeted by several Chinese diplomats. You want crazy stuff? Someone in the media will have it for you. But if you want fun, there's plenty of that too. And to cheer you up, we'll leave you with this song from three guys in isolation in Spain. And we'll see you Thursday with Media Bites. Goodbye.
Please stay home. Please stay home. Don't want the corona. Please stay home. Oh God, please stay